Welcome to our Really Awesome Podcast, episode number 38. Today we're exploring the powerful question, does it really matter that we have so many taboos? Probably in our own lives and in society in general. My guest today has powerful insights on the subject. So without further ado, let's begin. Yay, okay. Now. Okay. I just have to push a button, but I'll push it now. Okay. See you in a minute.
Today's guest, Nancy Barrows.
My guest today is Nancy Barrows. Let me tell you a little about Nancy. This is amazing. She's amazing. Nancy is dedicated to sharing her story openly and honestly. Her stories include the taboo topics of sexual abuse and eating disorder and depression. In speaking openly and honestly, she is putting energy into disarming the associated stigma. I love that sentence that she wrote. In speaking openly and honestly, she is putting energy into disarming the associated stigma, which makes us too uncomfortable to engage in the conversations that need to be had. Furthermore, she says, I am actively creating and holding safe space to have difficult conversations so that they become easier to engage in with one another. As a guy who at one point was afraid to share the sound of his voice and his quote-unquote speech impediment for fear of what others might think. Nancy's work strikes me as courageous and noble. But without further ado, I said ado twice. It's way too much doing, but you get the point. Let's welcome Nancy Barrows.
I don't know if you can do too much of doing.
Probably not. Welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We booked this months ago.
Yeah, we did. Literally months ago, which is why you probably said we booked it months ago.
I don't mind confirmation.
I want to start with the question I asked you in the email because your answer was so amazing. So let me look at it to get it precisely. So Nancy, when you say taboo won't do, which is an excellent rhyme, by the way, taboo won't do it. Sounds like it could be in a Dr. Seuss book. How would you, when you say taboo won't do, how would you summarize the discomfort, pain, and social costs of having a society where so much is taboo?
Yeah, that was a great question. I told you that in the email. It's a fantastic question. First and foremost, we're hurting one another, right? We're hurting one another by hiding our true selves. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're showing up less than 100%, and social media tends to, we tend to show up at our best moments. And what we're doing is creating this culture where if you are not perfect, your life isn't, all happy and smiles and success, that you feel like you don't fit in and nobody understands and you feel alone, unlovable, right? Rejected. And, it goes further than that. People feel like they're a freak. They feel like they're different from everyone else and no one could possibly ever understand, and leads to a lot of mental health issues. And all of that is something that we can change just by our willingness to show up real, 100% real. I'm looking at some notes I said, but it's really about the cost to one another in addition to the cost to ourselves. So I know from years of not showing up 100% real and authentic, and having all these taboo subjects around me, that I lost my voice. Right? I think that's another big thing. If things are...
You lost your voice.
What
do you mean by that?
So I still had a voice, I could talk, but when you have taboo subjects, trying to start a conversation about them or engage in them, or even, any sort of hint toward them, makes people really uncomfortable. And so it was clear to me when I was going through, along my journey, that speaking about sexual abuse, speaking about eating disorders, talking about major depressive episodes where you don't get out of bed or you drop out of college after being president of your class and captain of the volleyball team, those were not discussions we had. Right? We did not talk about those things. It's not something society wanted to hear about. And that was really clear to me, which meant I didn't talk about any of it.
Wow. So before we go further, Brian Schumann, who introduced us, who is so wonderful, says you both look awesome.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you for being here, Brian. You're an amazing supporter.
Yeah, Brian gives so much support out to a huge community like you do. You both do, actually.
Thank you.
So I wasn't planning to go in this direction, but so what changed for you that you started using your voice more?
Well, it happened slowly over time, but the first thing that happened actually was I had been in a summer program. So I had been being abused by my grandfather. Okay, I'm going to back up once more because not everybody's heard my story, and I will disclose, now it's about sexual abuse in part, and I know that is not comfortable, and I thank everyone who's willing to sit in the discomfort during this conversation, because that's where we're growing and that's where we can make a change. So I was at a summer program and I had been sexually abused by my grandfather, and it was still going on. And I was about 15 years old, and there was a conversation happening where a bunch of girls got together and they were talking about like the first guy they liked, the first kiss they had. And in my head, I realized that all of my firsts were not things you could share. You didn't say them out loud, right? I knew that for sure. And I became emotional. It was one of those moments where I felt really different. I knew that I had the secret, and I knew that I was certain no one would understand it. And, it sort of solidified this is going to be my secret forever moment.
You said you realized that all of your firsts were nothing that you could share.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they were talking about, first experiences, we were 15, so they weren't, necessarily major sexual experiences. Nobody was having intercourse or anything like that, but they were all that those rites of passage. And that was not going to be something I would ever be able to talk about honestly. And so when I became emotional, and there was another girl that I was friends with in the program, and I give her a ton of credit. Hi, Tim. I give her a ton of credit because at 15 years old, she found out something that was really shocking to her. She had never heard of, had never dealt with. And she was willing to risk a friendship, which at 15 years old, that's a big deal. We don't make waves at 15 often, and we don't risk friendships. Like, we don't go tell somebody something knowing that you could lose a friend and they'd be upset with you. But she saw something that she knew was bigger than her and that I needed help with. And so she told one of the adults at the program. And at the time, I had no idea there was any such thing as a mandated reporter. This was new to me. And I actually didn't really understand it until I became so I started working in the educational system in public schools. So really what mandated reporters were and what the process was. But she told a woman named Moira Kelly. And while the process is anonymous, these people chose to tell me.
Mm.
So that was, the system didn't fail them, they chose. But and what had happened is she knew that she had to report, and she very bravely came to me. Again, I'm so fortunate that the people who were in my life and on my journey with me were brave and strong and supportive and lovely and open. But she came to me and she gave me a choice. So I had this secret, this abuse that I had been holding on to because it felt like my life depended on keeping it secret.
And about how many years were you holding on to this?
So if I was 15, 16 years old, the abuse started around 5 years old, so 11 years.
So for a decade, over a decade of your
At least a decade. And it wasn't that it had stopped and I just, held the secret. It was still happening. So I was still in danger, and there was still the risk of enduring more abuse. So this woman, Moira Kelly, came to me and she asked me, she told me what had happened, that someone had come to tell her, and that she had a responsibility, her role and responsibility wasn't her choice, that she had to report it to the proper agencies, which, are things like the police, the sheriff's office, Department of Child Family Services. So she let me know that. And she also said that they wanted to tell my parents. Somebody needed to tell my parents. And she gave me the choice of them telling my parents or me telling my parents. So that was the first little bit of control that I got back when this all started, right? Because now it's out of my hands. It's going to the court system. My parents have to be told. Who else? I don't know. But she gave me a choice. And I don't know that a lot of people would have done that. And I don't think she knows how significant that was to me. I certainly didn't at the time know how significant having a choice was going to be. But I chose to tell my parents myself. I felt that if they were going to hear it, it should come from me and not a stranger. And so, my parents, amazingly so, get a phone call from their 15-year-old daughter who's at a summer camp, letting them know, right, that I told them that my grandfather had been inappropriate with me, and they asked some questions and ultimately asked me, do you want us to come get you? Do you want to come home? And I said, no. My life was very safe. Like, the abuse was very compartmentalized in the sense that my grandparents lived far away. My core family was safe, but my grandparents would come and visit for long stretches of time. When they did come visit, they'd stay with us. So outside of those times in the year, I really was as good as you can be when you've had this type of trauma. But I was at this summer program and I didn't want to come home. And I, again, give my parents a ton of credit, because I can only imagine you receive that news. The first thing you want is to bring your child home, have them with you, be able to see them, hold them tight, touch them, know they're okay, protect them, all of that. And
so your parents gave you a second choice.
Yes. So I have a second choice. So I had one choice and then a second choice. And those things are really significant in the process. How your disclosure goes and how the people around you respond, it can be a whole another trauma, or it can be the first step in healing. And while it was
traumatic, can be a whole nother trauma, or it can be the first step in healing.
Yeah.
That's profound.
Well, it's true, because this secret had been ripped from me and I felt like I unleashed it on my family. And that was traumatic at the time, because I was not ready to tell anyone. I was never planning on telling anyone. I didn't even run the scenario through my head. It was never anything that was going to happen. And so, this was unleashed, and I'm going through the trauma of it's out there, damage control, seeing my family suffering through it. I mean, I went through the abuse, but they went through their own trauma in discovering what had been going on and how long, and seeing their daughter go through it was not easy. And they were doing all of that for themselves while supporting me, which that's incredible strength right there. So I was given two important choices right off the bat that at the time I didn't realize were going to be so significant, but they really were. So I was received without doubt. Nothing changed in the relationships. I was still loved. I was still told I was loved. I was still told, there was nothing wrong with me. You're great. We love you. We're so proud of you. Whatever the words were, they were all very positive. And so my disclosure, for someone who wasn't planning on it, actually went really well, if you can think of it that way. because my parents never doubted. And it was 2 weeks before I was coming home from the program. And I later learned that they spent 2 weeks educating themselves, top to bottom, everything they could know, so that when I came home, they would be quote unquote ready. You're never ready, but they were putting the effort forward to figure out, like, what's the best thing we can do for our daughter. And that's pretty, I mean, I know that's, my mom will always say to me, that's what parents do, but I know that's not what every parent does. I've talked to other people who have disclosed and have had very different experiences from mine. You know, been told to shut up, been told it never happened, been told to get out, kicked out of their homes. You know, it's, so to me, maybe it's what my parents did, but it's special because it's not what how everybody is received, for sure.
So in a sense, you had a lot of I want to say angels for anyway, a lot of really courageous people. One the friend who was your age, to the mandated reporter who had not only the capacity to report, but the capacity to give you choice. And then your parents who gave you a choice to stay and then spend those 2 weeks educating themselves on everything they could.
The best of a worst situation. I've said that repeatedly, and I will stand by that. I had the best of a bad situation.
So speaking of your parents educating themselves, it brings up this more general question. So often it seems like we try to prevent things we don't want in life by having the attitude, if we ignore it, it won't exist. It'll just go away. It'll just be gone. Why doesn't this attitude get us the results we want?
Well, basically, if there's a chair in my living room and I put a blanket over it and I can't see the chair anymore, it doesn't mean it's not there, right? We can stop talking about things. We can pretend they don't exist, but it doesn't mean that they're not still there. It's still happening. And so it's actually a dangerous mentality, because we're creating a situation in which it's easier for these things to happen. We're not looking, we don't want to know, we don't want to talk about it because it makes us too uncomfortable, right? So again, that cloak of silence around it.
Cloak of silence.
Yeah, really, for me, I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I knew that was a bad thing. You could feel it from people. I say even today, it's like, you'll hear people talk. And I was 16 years old and I'm 16. I'm 47 now and nothing has changed. But people will talk, about depression a little bit more. They'll be like, oh my gosh, you've really been suffering from depression, really sad, having trouble. And it sounds like that. Someone talking about sexual abuse is typically like, oh my God, I'd kill myself. Right? Which, if you're someone who's been through it and you hear people saying that, why would I tell you? You think it's so awful that you wouldn't want to exist anymore. What would you think of me if I told you that's what I have going on? And the more we talk about it, the less likely it's going to happen, because we have an opportunity. And it's a really simple, quote unquote, cure. Talk to your children. Talk to kids when they're young. Teach them about boundaries. Teach them that it doesn't matter if it's good or bad to anyone else. All that matters is how they feel. So, boundaries with a bath. I did this with my nieces and nephews. So I would ask them, once they got to an age where I could trust they would clean themselves, and they were in the bath, I'd be like, is it okay if I wash your vagina now? And I would ask every time, because everybody has a right to change their mind. Just because I said it was okay last time doesn't mean it's okay this time. And having those conversations about your boundaries and your bodies, and knowing what it feels like in your body when somebody does something and it makes you feel icky isn't just enough. You don't need to know anything more, and it doesn't matter who does it. And we tell them to come to us, right? As adults, safe adults, find those safe adults. But if we really hold the space for people when they disclose, and not just children, there are adults who have been through this who've never told anyone. men and women. It's not just an issue that women are having, and men often are left out of the discussion, the conversation, but there are a lot of adults too who have never told anyone. But if we as a community, as people, as humans, create this safe, brave space where someone can come to us and whatever's going on with us in the moment doesn't matter. What matters is that we are telling you are loved unconditionally. You're accepted unconditionally. I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. Right? Because I knew I was scared. I was going to scare people off. They would think I was disgusting. They wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. There are all these, so much shame around everything that had happened and for so many reasons over the years, that I was scared. I was scared that people were going to say, well, why didn't you just say no? Or why didn't you just tell someone? And I know people have those questions in their head and they're legitimate from the outside in. It makes sense, right? You knew this was wrong. Why didn't you just say no? You knew this was wrong. Why didn't you just tell someone? Well, it started when I was 5 years old. I didn't know then. I came to know it's not something that happens to everyone. And by the time I started to learn all that, again, the shame, I felt I was just as much to blame because I hadn't said no and I hadn't told anyone and it had gone on for so long that, I would be looked at the same as my grandfather. So if we are teaching kids about their bodies and about holding their voice and not worrying about how it feels to anyone else or looks to anyone else, and as adults, we're holding up our end of the bargain and creating that space for people to talk, it is very hard for an offending adult to find someone to victimize. If they know they're going to talk, right? A kid's going to talk. It's really hard. I told my brother a conversation, and I think everyone should have if you have children and people are taking care of them, any caregiver. When you have a babysitter, say to them like, hey, listen, we talk to our kids about whatever terms you use, good touch, bad touch, boundaries, however. And we need to know that you are comfortable if our child came to you to just receive them this way, right? This is what we've told them will happen. Two things. First of all, if there's the situation, your child will be given that beautiful, quote unquote, disclosure situation. You're accepted, you're loved, no one's going anywhere. We're going to do this together. But you're also telling someone who would potentially be an offender, if you try this, we talk about this, our kids are going to tell us. So not here, not in our house, not in our family. So there's so many powerful things we can be doing. And I know parents think of it as a sex talk when they think, oh, we can't talk to our kids about this. It is the farthest thing from a sex talk. This is that's true. Okay. Sorry, Marissa, I see your comment. Yes. Some people are threatened, right? And there is fear. It's not going to totally eliminate it. I wish I could say it would totally eliminate it, but there are also people who will hear all those messages and still not feel that they can or brave enough or that they have who to go to with this. And yes, if, the situation was different and someone held a gun to your head, people are told all sorts of things that are weapons without it being a gun or a knife. You're told that your family is going to leave you and not love you. If you tell your mom, you're going to kill your mom. Who knows what it is, right? There's a lot of grooming that goes on. And I appreciate you bringing this up. Because again, every situation is different. And as strange as it sounds, my grandfather loved me. So it wasn't that kind of situation where he was threatening my life or anything of that nature. But there was, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but somehow we entered into an agreement and I knew I wasn't supposed to tell. But I really, really appreciate your perspective on this because it's true. And maybe it is a little idealistic, but it's not going to hurt anything if we speak about it this way. If we start educating kids this way as adults, we create this space. And while it may not cure everything, it's a start. And it's something that we can all do.
What you're talking about is really proactive, getting ahead of what might happen.
Yes, ideally we keep it from happening, but that's not always the case. Again, my parents thought they were doing a great job, and they were, right? One of the things we're told as mandated reporters is to look for certain signs. And the reality is sometimes there are no signs, and that's the sign. I was an Oscar-worthy actress. I didn't want anyone to know. So I put everything into making sure that no one had a reason to look at me, right? Twice. That was it. So if you were looking for them, they were probably subtle. I had learning disabilities too. So you could, poor performance in school was easily just not dismissed, but there was a reason for it. Oh, she has learning disabilities. She struggles with, to thrive educationally. So that's the hard part. There are some really classic signs, but there's also often no signs.
You said one thing that I just want to point out and reemphasize. You said you asked your nephews and nieces every time for permission to help them wash, and I think that asking every time that frequently gets forgotten.
Yeah. And, life, we're in a rush. We got to get you in and out of the bath. And, in this case, there were 3 kids and it happens. But if more often than not, we are having those open discussions, we've got a better chance. We've got a better chance. And listen, think about it as an adult. They're going to grow into adults that we want to have boundaries and understand that, their bodies are private and theirs and they get a choice. We all should know that. We all should feel confident in that. But unfortunately, it's not the case for everyone. And it may be they were taught that, but they didn't internalize for whatever reason. But again, the more we're talking, the more we're trying, the more we're educating, the better chance we have of decreasing the incidence and the statistics around, sexual abuse and assault.
Let's move on to another topic that has similarities and that it's not talked about well yet all the time. And that is depression, and part of the reason, I think, at least for me, when a friend tells me that they're depressed, I'm not always sure what to do, how to help, how to move the needle, and that's I find that scary.
Right. Of course. Like, especially in certain situations, you don't want to make a mistake because you don't want to make things worse. Right. I like to believe, and I do believe that most of us are caring humans who want to have a positive impact on the world and people around us. And so the idea of making something worse for someone you care about is not something, that we want to enter into willingly. So, everybody's different. And with some of the themes, though, that I've heard in talking about depression, and I know for me, we have a tendency to want to fix things. And
oh, yes,
nobody else can come in and fix your depression, right? You've got to use your tools. You've got to grow your toolbox. You've got to learn what works for you. You need to do whatever it is for you. Some people are like, nope, I need to be alone. Some people are like, don't leave me alone, right? I need that. For me, what it has been, and a theme that I've heard from other people, is just being willing to be with us in that space. It's a terribly lonely space to be in. And most people are uncomfortable, so they step back. And there's messages in that too, right? When you're depressed, you're going to internalize messages that fit your narrative of why people don't want to be with you. And, that this is because you're depressed and nobody loves you and nobody wants, that kind of thing. For me, it was just be with me in this space. I don't know yet how to get out of it. There's nothing anyone can do for me. It's not logic and reason. So you can give me all the reasons why I have a great life and things to be grateful for. But until I step into that fully, and I think gratitude is a huge help for this. And, for some people, listen, it's a biochemical response, and meds, again, medication for depression, something we don't really feel comfortable talking about. More and more we are comfortable.
Yeah.
But the idea of just sitting with someone and being okay with where they're at is huge. Not,
So would you talk more about being with someone? I mean, what does that mean? I understand the term abstractly, but
so
what does that mean when you say it?
I can give some examples for me, and I'm sure they work for some people and don't. So for me, if you notice a change in my communication, text me. Text me every day. Maybe don't ask me how I'm doing, but say thinking of you. Like that kind of thing, or, share something about yourself with me, engage me that way. Be patient if I don't respond. For me, it's things like I tend to retreat when I'm depressed, and it sounds, I guess when you're in it, you understand it, but people would say, come on, come out with us, come out with us. Like they want to be with you. But the meeting someone where they're at, like, no, come sit with me on the couch in pajamas, and maybe bring over some food or ice cream or cookies, and let's watch a movie and just be. Right? This is where I can do it. And that's, for me, a lot of the times my depression is in a place where, yes, I don't want anyone around me. But as I start to dig myself out, it's like, okay, I'm starting to feel better, but I still don't want to go out in the world, but I would be okay with seeing my people. And people coming to me is huge. And this actually happened during my divorce. And I lost my entire community because no one wanted to meet me where I was at. And people were upset with me and mad at me and blamed me for not showing up the way I used to, for not going to the kid's birthday party, to not having, meeting everybody out for dinner. And it was hard because I couldn't engage in things the way I had been. But if they could have come to me, it might have been a different story. So again, one of the best things to do is to ask someone, how can I support you right now? Is there anything you think I can do to support you right now? Because everybody's different.
So just a simple open-ended question.
Mm-hmm. I see.
That so makes sense. How can I support you right now?
Yes, and I see Eric made a comment. Thanks for being here, Eric. What if the feeling of depression isn't yours? So supporting someone else. And one of the things that I was just saying to Jason is these are things that are helpful for me. Therefore, if you're supporting someone, they might be helpful things for them. But someone who's in this position, and I've been there, may not know what they need. But just asking and knowing someone's there, like, do you have any sense of what you need in this moment that I can do to support you? Anything like that. You can even follow over the words, quite frankly, in my case, just the fact that you're asking, right? When you notice a change in communication, that's a big one. If someone's normally interacting and texting or, calling, and you're not hearing from them, reach out to them. I know for me, when I'm depressed, again, it's not that I don't want to hear. Initiation is so hard. Just taking the step to do something, including texting, is difficult for communication. And, there's been times when I've had people in my life, or even recently, actually, I was depressed, and a friend of mine reached out to other people they knew that were very good friends of mine and had been through this with me before, had been through depressive episodes with me before, and alerted them to the fact that I wasn't in a good place. And even though, and I've been there where you get angry at someone for doing that in the moment, in the long run, I respect and value and appreciative and grateful for the friend that will do that for me, because I can't do it for myself. Eric, I don't know if I'm answering your question. If you want to be more specific, please be. I'm not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist. I'm just sharing my experience and what I have learned from others by having these conversations over the years.
Jeff, before we get there, how about eating disorders? How, like, what signs should we be watching for? How do we support someone who's,
Yeah.
because it's kind of difficult to pick up on, right?
Well, again, I think most people who are engaging in behaviors that they know are taboo or that are not good for them or maladaptive go lengths to hide them because they don't want people to know. And so, that's hard. In the eating disorder realm, for me, I had a lot of really weird eating habits. And I became a vegetarian because then I could say no to things. But, Raquel and Courtney, who are my two friends from college that are on LinkedIn and Facebook a lot around these stories, will tell how I would eat lettuce with soy sauce on it because I wouldn't even eat salad dressing. I would hollow out a bagel, so it was just that thin crust on the outside. Like that's all I would eat of it. Moving food around my plate was a big one. Sort of like move it around, make it sort of look like I ate it. Telling people like if I showed up for a meal, like, oh my gosh, I just ate, I'm totally full, I'm good. I'm just gonna have, something to drink. I actually had my friend Courtney catch me spitting out a cookie. And that was one of those places where, again, she asked me if I just spit it out and I said yes. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but there was a choice. There was a choice for me to say I didn't like it or, yeah, actually, I'm not comfortable eating it. I don't remember how it went, but I know that some point in my healing from that, Courtney sat with me for 2 hours while I ate a cookie. Because that was my therapy assignment, was to actually eat it and know, like, okay, the worst thing you're thinking of isn't going to happen. And with eating disorders, it's very hard because especially if you're anorexic, the worst thing in my head that could happen was I would gain weight, right? That's what I outwardly thought it was about. And that's exactly what you have to do to get better. So it's very difficult. And people, I had one person say to me that they thought there was something going on with my eating and I was very defensive. And, she was great. It's actually my now sister-in-law, and she was great. She goes, I understand that you think you have it under control, but I see what you're doing and I'm worried about you.
So she acknowledged your position, but then she stayed true to what she believed at the same time.
Yeah, and she put it in terms of like she said to me, I know you believe you have it under control, right? Or you're in control. It didn't say that she believed me. But she understood that where I was coming from was like, I'm fine. I've got this all under control. I know you see this and I know you care and I appreciate that you love me, but it's not what you think. Right. And that's what it was in my head. And I was, my eating disorder is a lot of different reasons people develop eating disorders. For me, it was control. There's a big piece of it that was control. For me, it was punishing my body for having betrayed me for years during the abuse. Our bodies are wired, every cell, sexual touch, pleasure. My body was no different. It just was something I did not want. It betrayed me. That was the thinking. I also felt I was broken beyond repair and I wanted to disappear. So how do you do that? You become as small as you physically possibly can. Yeah. So, and I'm not a small, I'm tall, I'm 5'8", and was, gosh, I think my lowest was 110 pounds. I was never hospitalized, thankfully, but I used to have to sleep with a pillow between my knees because they hurt when they touched each other because it was just bone on bone. I would never get undressed in front of anyone. I wore baggy clothes. There were all sorts of things I was doing for all sorts of reasons that needed healing.
And just give us a snapshot of your healing journey.
Well, I think an important snapshot of my healing journey is
with the eating.
Yeah, is how how ugly it can be, how snotty it can be. It's very unsexy. Like, like that's the reality. I can sit here and talk to you today and have an easy-ish conversation, right? I'm able to have this conversation, but in the middle of it, it was literally things like taking 2 hours to eat a cookie and not being able to put, like, you get to the point where for me, it was, I realized, well, I thought I had all this control over my food. My food completely had control over me, because here I was saying, okay, I'm going to eat this cookie, and I could not get myself to put it in my mouth.
Wow.
Like I literally was picking like little crumbs off the table on my finger like that. And then like, okay, sit with that. Then could I eat more? And it was things like not weighing myself 14 times a day.
14 times.
Oh, I worked in a doctor's office. When I dropped out of GW, I worked in a doctor's office, and there was one of the rooms that they didn't use, one of the exam rooms, and they had, one of those scales with the slide. I was in and out of that room every chance I got to make sure nothing changed.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was something that I felt I needed to do, right? I needed to monitor it so closely. So being able to walk by without doing it, being willing to be happy. One of the things that hit me hardest when therapist said to me, it was a nutritionist that I was working with, said, so here, she explained the process. When you starve your body will start to eat your fat, sure. But then when there's no more fat, it starts to eat muscle. And she looked me right in the eye and said, your heart is a muscle. So you will end up with heart damage. At best, if you keep going, at worst, you may lose your life. There's a lot of energy that went into hiding it. And then there was a lot of energy and hard work and rolling up my sleeves and steps forward and steps backward to continue to make the changes toward healthy, to value myself and my health and my body and respect it. It was more than just eating, which I couldn't do. I couldn't get myself to do. It took a lot of work. But it was a lot more than just changing my eating habits.
Wow. So now you've been on this journey and now you're helping, you're being a guide in a sense for, or not in a sense, you're like literally being a guide to other people, both who you know and sometimes who you don't know. Someone listening to our conversation, to what you say today, you could literally be giving them a path to saving their life.
It gives me chills, because what a privilege that is. And for me, what it's about is I have been fortunate to come through this really on the other side. And to me, I'm not just surviving. I was a survivor for many years. I just survived, and then I started to thrive. And the fact that I can tell my story and I can really say to someone, I understand. You want to talk about the ugly things, like I talked about the sexual touch and pleasure. It's terrifying to say that to someone, right? That your abuse was pleasurable, but hey, I'm here. I've been there. We can talk about it. It's really okay. You have someone to come to. But even more than that, I tell my story for the people who can't find their voice, haven't yet found their voice, or not brave enough, right? Or not there yet. I'm going to say yet. And if you hear someone talking about this, well, there's a little bit of permission there. I hope that's what it feels like, is like, well, she's talking about it. And if you look at what's going on, nothing bad is happening. In fact, quite the opposite. The most amazing things have happened in the last 7 months since I started speaking publicly about all of my, trials, tribulations. And
this is you're just 7 months into speaking publicly?
Yes. So
I thought you've been doing this for years.
No, I know. I am fortunate that I stepped into it in a place when I was really ready. And that's what it feels like to other people. I had talked about my abuse and my eating disorder with the people around me. It wasn't a secret in my life anymore, but I'd never said it to strangers. I had never put it out there for anyone to hear and have a conversation without me there. That was new to me. And that happened on LinkedIn 7 months ago. And it was totally unplanned. And the response that I got from people was this aha moment of, wow, nobody's doing this, is what I kept saying. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's talking about this the way you're talking about it. And that it was so needed, and that it took me a while. And actually, I will say thank you to Brian Schulman, because he was one of the conversations I had that said, you don't think of your story as remarkable. And I don't, because I've lived with it my whole life. But the fact that I can tell my story when so many people can't or won't, that's what makes me special. And so that just got into every fiber of my being. And I'm not going to stop telling my story, because there are people benefiting from it every time I tell my story. And I've been gifted with people coming back to me and letting me know that. But as many people as come back to me, there are all those people who are just silently supporting or changing and growing and expanding and finding, that courage within them to take a step forward that I will never know about. And that's why I keep telling my story. That's why I keep showing up. That's why, I created Radiating Real. That's why I talk about what I do on my live shows. That's why I started the Chick with the Tool Belt program, let's find your inner voice. Let's find what's in you, and let's figure out how you can comfortably share that voice with the world and use that voice to express yourself and to connect with people and have that engagement. And it's been 7 months. And trust me, when I start talking about all these things, it blows my mind. And actually, another thing that blew my mind is I was just approved for LinkedIn Live. I haven't had I finally got approved. Yes. After over 40 applications.
Side note on persistence here. Side note, how many applications? Did you say 4 applications?
Oh, no. I'd have to count it, but it's more than 40.
More than 40. More. Mm-hmm. If you believe in something, just keep going. But that's a side note. So quickly, I mean, we have a lot of beautiful things to cover in the last few minutes, but quickly, what is hashtag Brave Space?
Oh, so Brave Space is, we talk about safe space, and safe space we hold for people to share, and we can be with them. To me, Brave Space is where we all enter in together, saying we're all willing to be vulnerable. We're all going to take the same risk, right? And so it's not one person putting themselves out there. We're all doing it together. And to me, Brave Space is really where the work gets done, really where people can show up and know, right, that they're not going to have to be out there on their own. Thank you, Katie J. And Eric, thank you. Could really help people to 12 speaker meeting. Thank you. If you know how to get me involved, I'm happy to do it. Anything that will help, I'm there. So thank you. And yes, a Katie J comment is always something that makes you smile. Thank you, Katie J. And I saw Brian's had a question about Radiating Real. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. We do definitely. Yeah. Tell us about hashtag Radiating Real.
So hashtag Radiating Real was born out of my LinkedIn journey, where I finally showed up completely as I was, right, and told my story, which I had held on to. I'd held back because I work with kids, and people have ideas about people who have been abused and choose to work with kids. And I was always worried that someone would think that, and it would, whatever it would do. I don't even know that I thought through what that would mean. But after taking that mask off and feeling how much my energy shifted and how much lighter I felt, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We need to be doing this all the time. Combine that with when I went through my divorce several years ago, I thought I was failing at divorce. I literally gave myself a report card and I was failing, because anyone else that I knew that went through a divorce only showed that outside picture of, I'm doing fine. I'm great. I show up at work. I do what I need to do. I get the kids to their play dates. I am showered and dressed and out of the house. And I thought, well, I'm not. I'm going through pictures and trying to figure out, do I throw out pictures of my past life because my ex-husband's in them, and crying looking at every one of them because they were amazing memories? I was really struggling, and had people known they could enter into brave space, maybe they would have been showing another side, and I wouldn't have felt so alone, bad, and like a failure. And so thinking about the fact that when we just show up as ourselves in the moment, real, right, and authentic, we're radiating real, and that's should be the norm. When I come on and record things or post pictures of myself, and I'm unshowered and my hair isn't brushed, and I haven't slept in 5 days because I'm working on something with Brian Schulman and Tim Sohn, which ends up being our thing, our dream team. And I put it out there. People kept saying, "Oh my gosh, I love how real you are. I love how authentic you are. I love that you are showing yourself this way." And it spoke to the fact that people don't do it. Because if people were doing it, I would just be getting feedback on my message, not the fact that I was real and showing up and being honest. So put that all together, and out came Radiating Real. I tried to start it once, and it didn't get a lot of warm welcome, and persistence and cheerleading had me doing it again. And honestly, the way it started, I had talked about doing it, but somebody actually took the first step for me. So I was on a show with Ira Berman and Joe Stepke on LinkedIn talking about this, and they loved it. One of their audience members did it right then and there. And then the next day they did it. And it just started from there. And, it's been about 2.5 weeks, I'd say, and 18 people have done it. And 3 of those people have done it multiple times. Tim Sohn has done it 10 times. He now can't stop. Daily, he is radiating real. And in the beginning, I said, take a picture of yourself when you wake up in the morning, which I wanted that, like, here you are, vulnerable and real in that moment. And the reality is, what I've learned, and that's, what happens during these things, we're constantly growing and learning too, is that you can radiate real whenever you want. There's no wrong way to radiate real.
There's no wrong way to radiate real.
There's no wrong way to radiate. So if you want to take the picture after your hard workout and you're sweaty and red and you are proud of it, put it up there. That's radiating real. If you want to do it at the end of a hard day and you're exhausted and that's where you're at, put it up there. You're radiating real. And I can give anyone who's interested, and I would welcome you all to do it. There's copy I can give you if you're not sure how to start. But the idea is you put that picture up, you say why you're doing, how you're feeling in the moment, and you invite others to do the same, and you explain what the campaign is all about. And quite frankly, somebody keeps telling me, stop calling it a campaign, it's a movement. And it is. It's a radical change that we can all be a part of.
And there's some info across the screen about how to connect with you. And
if you found me here on Facebook, that's probably the hardest place to find me, because it's Nancy Deborah. Because I don't use my last name, because I am a public school employee. And it's best to not have situations in which either a student or a family, I'm even having to deal with them reaching out to me. On LinkedIn, I'm Nancy Barrows. And I have a bunch of letters after my name, MSCCC SLP. So if you're unsure of which Nancy Barrows, I've got the alphabet soup after my name. Feel free to connect. Send me a message. Tell me you saw me here, so I know where to pick up on our conversation. I'm also on Instagram and all of those other places. But, all you have to do is find one place to connect, and then if you're looking to find me everywhere, I can show you where to look on YouTube and Instagram. And like I said, I've been encouraged to get on Twitter now, which, for me, I feel a little old for Twitter and Twitch, but I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm continuing to embrace what I set out to do, which was reach as many people as I could. So if it means learning Twitch and Twitter, then I'm going to learn about Twitch and Twitter.
Please connect with Nancy, as you can tell. Just you've been through the journey, and you have so much wisdom, and you're also so kind. So the combination of wisdom and kindness. Please connect with Nancy.
Thank you.
Last question. So I like to talk about doing the power of doing our imperfect best, and what it means to me is we have an idea of our best, and then when imperfections come up, we use those imperfections to learn from and move us forward instead of using them to stop. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Nancy Barrows?
Doing your imperfect best means two things to me: showing up and starting. So
showing up and starting.
Right. Two things, right? Just show up. There's nothing about being perfect in the rule book. Just show up. And just start. We all think we have to know it. We can't have any anxiety or fear. We have to know exactly what's going to happen. We have to have it all figured out and no doubt. And the reality is it's all there and you can still start, but nothing's going to happen if you don't start.
There's nothing about being perfect in the rule book. That's amazing. So you said two things: starting, and what was the second thing?
Show up is one, and just start.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's happened for me in the last 7 months was because I showed up.
Amazing. Thanks for being on Awkwardly Awesome podcast at this point where you've come so far in your journey, and you're ready to radiate well and be the brave space. As you speak, you're helping each one of us speak, which is really all the more beautiful because you're a speech therapist too. So so many levels.
I got into a profession that I didn't realize was allowing me to give other people a voice when I had lost mine for so long, right? I'm helping people communicate, and it's just the universe is brilliant. Brilliant. It knew the path I was supposed to be on and when everything was supposed to happen, as it always does, if you just allow for it.
Beautiful, and that's goosebumpy. So thank you, Nancy, and thanks for all the comments, Brian, Tim, and others. It's been a great show.
And Marissa, it has been. Thank you for having me.
And Marissa.
Thank you for creating this space. It's because of people like you that created space for me to come and speak about my story that this is happening, right? I could be telling my story, but if there was nowhere to gather people to hear it, then I wouldn't have been able to accomplish what I've accomplished by reaching so many people who need to hear the message. So thank you. And if you're watching now or on replay and you think someone would benefit from hearing this conversation, please tag them. Please tag them if you think they could benefit from it in any way. That's the whole idea, is that whoever needs to hear it hears it. And I see that Tim is telling me to say "love," so I love you guys for being here.
Well, thank you, Nancy, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, that was just amazing. It's amazing how healing conversations can be. Thanks for tuning in. And tune in next week's same time, same place, which is wherever your computer is, or your iPhone, or your Android. You get the idea. Bye for now.